Hey, good evening, Pool Player Nation. Welcome to the APA studio. I'm Jason Bowman, and I'm joined by Bill Tufts. We have just wrapped up, like many of you folks, I'm sure, watching day one of this year's Mosconi Cup. And Bill, I know it wasn't an APA event, but it was pretty damn good to see a massive, major pool production go off today.
I'll tell you what, it really brought a smile to my face to see an event go off, and especially an event of this caliber, and just to have pool back in 2020 has been huge.
It was definitely huge. It definitely looked a lot different, and we're going to talk about all that tonight. We've just been so excited that Mosconi Cup is back. We figured we would get together after each day's matches, talk to each other a little bit. We always talk anyway about the matches, and we figured we'd bring you guys in. We've got some guests that are going to be joining us and talking through all the action that took place today. Such a crazy day, of course. Team USA did not come out on the upper hand today. They split today 2-3, unfortunately. But it could have been much worse, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, Bill, I just want to touch on like the difference, the atmosphere difference. It looked different, felt different, a lot of different, right? What did you think?
Well, I think in 2020 we've all gotten used to sports looking different, sounding different, being different. I think Matchroom did a great job with the production of this event. I think that they really knocked it out of the park with bringing in the different atmospheres, like the videos and the music and the players. All of it was great.
Yeah, Matchroom Sport, again, the promoters of the Mosconi Cup, outstanding job. Really kind of an early Christmas present for all of us pool fans, where we've had no professional pool tournaments since March of this year. And so, you know, we had to wait a while, but we do end up with the Mosconi Cup. Of course, no audience, which was a little different. But I got to tell you, Bill, I expected that the no audience thing, that I would notice it a lot more. And I'm going to preface this, but you know, generally, like the last few years, I've been in there in person, so I haven't seen it on TV as much. But I found I didn't notice the lack of crowd as much on the TV production as I thought I might. What did you think?
No, I thought that piping in the sound, having the crowd sound behind it, really kind of brought back kind of that feel of the Mosconi. I know that the crowd's a huge part of the Mosconi event. But in this particular case, like, it wasn't as missed as I thought, as I thought it would be. Now, I do know that the players had some comments about not having the crowd. Some of the people working the event had some comments about not having the crowd, and I know that we'll touch on that a little bit later when we actually get into the play that occurred on the table.
Yeah, speaking of play on the table, you know, I would say the other thing that I noticed immediately on day one, and it kind of carried on throughout the day, but the play overall was not as sharp as what you've seen in past Mosconi Cups. And I think, obviously, there's good reason for that. You haven't had professional pool competitions in several months. I know the Texas Open, they did have a few weeks back. But other than that, these guys haven't played a lot of pool. But it was it was different to see these world-class shooters make mistakes and miss some shots that you really aren't used to them seeing. And again, I think that's a byproduct of the layoff that they've had.
I think absolutely. I think some of that was to be expected. I think maybe we saw more of it than we thought we would see going in, just because these guys are so good and they're such professionals. They take such great care of their game. But I mean, we are talking about the Mosconi Cup. We're talking about the pressure of the world on top of you. We're talking about a brand new table. You know, we're talking about just everything that's heaped on these players. Team USA loses a player to COVID, all the backstory, these players being in a bubble. I think there's a lot to it that could lead itself to a little bit more of a rough first day than what anybody anticipated.
Yeah, you mentioned table conditions, and I know that's kind of like your baby, because in Vegas you're responsible for the table conditions, or at least the vendors that bring in the tables and the conditions. But so I'm curious what you thought. I know they talked a lot about the pockets today and the felt and the table was fast. What did you see from table conditions today?
Definitely saw what was a new table. You know, and it's a beautiful table. It's set up great. You didn't see any bad rolls, anything like that. But what you did see was some slick felt. You saw some play, some ball sliding that, by day 2, 3, as we get more matches played on this, you're not going to see. But I think everybody was struggling a little bit with the speed of the table. I think it was brought up multiple times during the broadcast. It takes some getting used to. And I think that players being rusty probably lends itself to not adapting to that table as fast as they would in a normal year.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because some of the players that I thought each team had some players stand out despite kind of the mistakes that we saw. And we'll talk about that as we get into the matches. But I'm going to, kind of a teaser. I don't think it was the players we expected. I think some of the players that we had expected maybe to struggle played a little bit better, and the players that we expected not to struggle did just a little bit. So, again, we'll get into that. But you did mention a last-minute change to Team USA. I'm sure a lot of folks are already aware of this if they follow the Mosconi Cup, but Team USA member Justin Bergman, who's from right here in the St. Louis area, not too far from where our studio is here, was ruled out of the Mosconi Cup for testing positive for COVID-19. So Corey Deuel comes in very last minute. I mean, this was announced last week. He's able to get to London, and so he's playing. So a little bit of a change in team chemistry for Team USA. That was kind of one of the storylines, and we'll talk about Corey's performance today. The other interesting thing that came out in the last few days, if you watched the press conference yesterday, the Matchroom press conference, Team USA, Team Europe, pretty ho-hum, not all that interesting, to be honest with you, with the exception of some comments that came forth from Jason Shaw of Team Europe, really calling out some members of Team USA. I mean, I think he called them like snakes in the grass, and they didn't really elaborate, but he was obviously very upset about something, and I think it stemmed from some interactions on social media. We're gonna have Mike Panozzo of Billiards Digest join us in a few minutes, but it's my understanding there was some back and forth, some good-natured back and forth last week that maybe started to become a little too personal, and so it really showed up in that press conference, and so I was interested in seeing how Jason played today, and we'll talk about it, but he was on his game.
I think he was on his game. I think I also watched the presser. I thought that it was an interesting part, to say the least, especially since it seemed like a lot of Team Europe didn't know exactly what Jason was talking about, and it seemed like Team USA was just as baffled.
Right.
Now, what's going on behind the scenes, what they actually know, we may find out during this Mosconi Cup, but it actually added quite an interesting edge to the day, and I think it probably will lead to this fan vote that we're going to talk about.
I sure hope so, and we will definitely talk about that. And then the other thing that I noticed, and it wasn't a huge thing, but like the walk-ins today of the teams, did you notice Team Europe came in all wearing masks, Team USA came in no masks?
Yeah, I did.
I mean, I don't know what the discussions were or why things were done a certain way, but I was like, that seems somewhat symbolic of kind of what's going on in the world. And I'm not, judging either way or anything like that, but it was just interesting to see like this real world conversation playing out in the landscape of the Mosconi Cup, the way these teams walked in. And so, just added to the intrigue of the day.
Yeah, I thought it added to the intrigue. I will say, midway through the match, I noticed that the European players were sitting together without their mask on, so that may have been more symbolic than anything.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a nice little feature, to kind of focus on right there at the beginning.
It was very interesting. So lots to talk about with this year's Mosconi Cup. Day one, we want to jump right into it. Let's take a look at some of the numbers from the first day. Again, we mentioned Team Europe has the advantage after day one. They lead 3-2, and we're going to dive into each of the matches. But as you can see, Team USA started off the day well, winning the first match, but then went on to drop the next three. And thankfully, Shane Van Boning, old SVB, stepped up late in his fifth match and salvaged the day. And so I want to get into that a little bit. And to do that, we're going to bring in Billiard Insider, the publisher of Billiards Digest, our match analyst, Mike Panozzo. We'll see if we can get Mike here. Mike, are you there, buddy?
I'm here. Are you there?
Mike is here. We are here. And so, Mike, Bill and I were just talking a little bit about all the kind of the differences on day one of the Mosconi Cup, things that we had expected, like no crowd and, the atmosphere and that kind of thing. Obviously, we touched on the fact that the players were not as sharp. Just curious, we'll get into the individual matches, but your general take on day one of this year's Mosconi Cup.
I think the players went through what we're all going through, and there's been a lot of downtime, didn't know what to expect, how was it going to be with no fans. I mean, they're dealing with all this too, so it's kind of a learning process for them. I think for them as well as for us, it was like walking in the dark. You just don't know what you're up against. So it kind of went a little bit as I thought it might, in terms of just feeling their way through. I mean, there's the walk-ons were cool, but you didn't see emotion from the players. There was nobody to high five. There was nobody to get you pumped up. And so I think they're learning how to deal with that difference. I think the emotion will get ratcheted up as the days go on. You'll see more of that little bit of chest bump into each other and to the other team, it'll start to develop itself over time. As far as the level of play, it wasn't great. But, I asked the coaches in the press conference afterwards whether they thought that was due to rust or whether they thought that was due to pressure or whether they thought that was due to the equipment. And they both pretty much said it's a rust factor. It's getting used to the fact that you're playing again in a competitive nature. You can have as many Zoom practice sessions as you want, and it's just not the same. So, each player only gets so many turns to the table. And I think that sinks in really fast in the Mosconi Cup, that if you're a Chris Robinson, you may get in 2 singles matches, you may get in a couple of doubles. You're not going to get that many chances to the table. So you really have to make the most of them. And I thought that the pressure and the rustiness kind of combined to make at least the first half of the day really pretty uneven.
Yeah, and I would expect, kind of like, you mentioned the intensity, you mentioned the rustiness. I would expect both of those things to improve as we get into day 2, day 3, day 4. I think the players will be sharper, and I think the intensity will go up because the matches will be closer, right? We're getting closer to that magic number of 11 matches, and so I think as the stakes seem to kind of tighten in, I think you'll see that intensity increase a little bit. So let's jump into day 1, Mike. Match number 1 was a huge match. It was, Team Europe jumps out to a big lead, and then major mistake happens, and Team USA is able to turn around. Just if you would, walk us through that first match, which, sometimes that first match, I mean, you always want to get off to a good start. But as we saw, like in 2018, Team USA didn't win the first match, went on to win the event. 2019, they did win the first match, went on to win the event. So it's not necessarily indicative of what's going to happen long term, but certainly you want to get off on a good start, and it certainly didn't look good early on for Team USA.
No, and really what the team match is about, what I think the players are most anxious about in the team match is they all want to get a feel for the table. They all want to get a couple of shots under their belt. They all want to make a ball. If you can get into that team match, and if I play you and you break and run out, I'm not shooting the ball until the next time my number comes up in a doubles or singles match. So I think that they use it to get their feet wet a little bit and to get into it. And I don't think the U.S. played terribly the first couple of games. I don't think there were many good opportunities for them the first couple of games. So all of a sudden they're behind 3-0. And then, as I'm sure we'll get into, Clint Catchy is looking like he's in a run-out situation to put them up 4-0, and gets called for a clothing foul, a ball touch foul, and things spin around from there. The momentum changed from that. In part, it just gave the U.S. a chance to get into the match at 3-1. But then a couple of the Europeans missed some shots the last couple of games that allowed the U.S. the opportunity to take that match. Each player from the U.S. ended up winning one of the games, so they had 5 wins in that match, and each one of them got to sink the winning 9-ball. I think that helped Team USA get a little bit looser, get a little bit more comfortable.
Right.
So it's not a match that means a lot in the grand scheme of things, but I think that each player gives them the opportunity to get a couple shots under their belt.
Yeah, so Josh Filler got Team Europe on the board first, beats Sky Woodward in that very first individual matchup. But it was kind of a fluke shot. Filler, he caught the side pocket corner and it kicked the ball all the way down into the, in the side pocket, and kicked it all the way down to the far corner. Really no way else to say it, but a fluke shot. And, I was thinking, this is a perfect demonstration for our APA folks that, luck counts even in the Mosconi Cup, right? So what did you think of that first match with Filler and Sky and kind of the way that it ended?
Yeah, well, it was the first match. It was just a weird vibe in the whole arena, I think. And I think the players kind of sensed that. Skylar missed a shot in that rack. And then Josh got that bounce, which was just, I've seen balls hit the tip of a side pocket and ricochet straight down the rail I've never seen one come out 9 inches and curve. It was like a masse shot off the tip of the side pocket. It was a really bizarre shot. And he seemed really apologetic after that. So that was just one of those things that happens, and it got them on a little bit of roll. But give Team USA credit for not giving up.
Yeah, so then we saw Shane Van Boening and Jason Shaw, which is always a fan favorite matchup. It may even be the fan vote matchup. We'll see. But it was interesting. Shaw ends up taking that match, or that game from Shane. But the reason that I found it interesting was because of some of the things that have been happening the last few days. Prior to the Cup beginning, Bill and I touched on early on, but the press conference yesterday when Jason Shaw, the press conference yesterday was pretty vanilla, I thought, but until Jason Shaw really kind of expressed some displeasure, he was really upset about something that had happened on social media, and obviously it involved Shane. What can you tell us about whatever that situation was that came up in that press conference between those two?
I would only speculate, so I can't really say what happened. Jason hasn't told me. I think some of it was pointed at Shane. He pointed at the whole team, except for he excluded Chris Robinson. But Jason's a very emotional guy. He's a very adrenaline-driven guy. He plays a lot with a chip on his shoulder. I think that, real or imagined, he's using something as a motivating factor to him to really dial in. And I think that it showed today. He only played in one match, and it was a doubles match. But he looked really solid, really comfortable, really focused. And we talked about before in the preview of the Mosconi Cup, I thought that the lack of fans would help Jason Shaw more than anyone, because he gets so emotionally geared up for a match with the fans there that it takes him some time to calm himself down. And there was a couple times where he went through a whole match and he never calmed down, and he would run into mistakes. So I think that this is allowing him to really zero in, and he's put that own chip on his shoulder to motivate himself. And I think that I expect him to have just a great tournament. Whether it'll be enough to carry Team Europe or not, I don't know. But I don't expect Jason Shaw to make too many silly mistakes.
Yeah, I thought he looked good today, and it's interesting what you say about, maybe he was creating something for himself to get motivated because he knew he wouldn't have the crowd. So that's an interesting take. Third match of the day, we saw the rookie Chris Robinson for Team USA matched up against Albin Ocean. That's a pretty tough matchup for the rookie, in my opinion, but I know the coaches don't necessarily know who the other team is throwing. But, Albin looked strong there. What did you think in that third matchup?
It's just, they talk about races to 5 being short races. This was a race to 1. You have 1 rack against Albin Ocean, and he was breaking. So, you're at a disadvantage right from the start. I don't think Chris Robinson was putting too much stock into that. I think he would have liked the opportunity to shoot a little bit more.
Right.
But, I don't think that distracted him much.
Yeah. In fact, I had it Albin broke dry, Chris missed the 1 ball, and then it looks like Albin ran out. So there wasn't a whole lot to that third game of that first match. So Team Europe is up 3-0, and they look well on their way to winning the team match. Clinty Catchy, he's up in the 4th match. He's playing Billy Thorpe, and it looks like he's in position to run out. And this is where it gets really interesting. Match really turns around here. He ends up being called for a foul, leaning over. I think he's shooting the 6 ball, but he makes contact, I believe, with his shirt on the 7 ball, and it's immediately called by the referee. Have you ever seen, Mike, you've been following the Mosconi Cup a lot longer than I have. I've not seen a clothing foul called, but, the referee called it immediately. What did you think of that?
It's just a silly mistake on his part. He can argue that it wasn't a foul or was a foul. It was close enough where he should have never been in that situation. He even got up before that and tucked his shirt in a little bit tighter.
Right.
And then leaned over to shot. He could have used a bridge. He could have stood a little taller. He's a tall guy to start with. Just a silly mistake to put himself in that position. I haven't seen that before. It may have happened. I don't recall. In the old days, they used to wear vests, so it would never happen. These shirts are a little blousier. So, it's just one of those, you don't expect it's going to turn a match around, but just a silly mistake that guys shouldn't make in this situation.
Yeah, so I want to bring in, if we could, too, we've got another guest here, Mike. We're going to bring him over just real quick, and you'll come back. But we've got FLORIAN KOHLER. If there's anybody that knows position play and and where things are at on the table. It's Florian, of course, Florian Venom KOHLER of trick shot fame. Florian, thanks for joining us, buddy.
And my pleasure.
So,
this was definitely an interesting day. So
yeah, I wanted to, you know, we don't have video from the matches, right? Because all that airs on DAZN or DAZN. But I wanted you, if you wouldn't mind, kind of demonstrating what happened with the catchy foul and kind of how, you know, how the shirt fouled and what happened from there. If you could just kind of show us, and maybe you can illustrate how he could have avoided what had happened.
yeah, so I try to recreate this shot on my table here. As far as my memory goes, you know, it might not be the right balls, but it looks like his cue ball is somewhere about there, and then 6 ball up table, 9 ball to see by the spots, you know, after the break. So not a lot of problems realistically for somebody that caliber. And I think the foul was on either 7 or 8 ball there, something like this. And so you got to think he was trying to bend over like this, right? Which is very much like this, and shirt just literally touched the 7, right? So this is one of the issues that I've always been trying to say for, you know, those baggy shirts. Like, you got a problem with it, you know, if they keep going down and you can't even see it. So as much as in the US it's sort of an okay thing, in Europe, you know, usually it's straight up as soon as you touch the ball, you know, foul is just going to be called. And interestingly enough, you know, last time was, I can't remember which Mosconi Cup it was, but it was an American that did that, and this time was a European. So, you know what I mean? They blamed it on culture last time, but in this case, it was simply a mistake. So I know we had catches saying it wasn't a foul, but, you know, realistically, couldn't even really tell. So
now, how could he have avoided, you know, obviously, you know, you're stretched out 9 feet over a table. He's a bigger guy. You know, what could he have done to have tried to avoid fouling in that situation?
I think, you know, if he was wearing a vest, it would be okay now. But in all seriousness, you know, definitely tuck the shirt more in. It's one of those shots that you kind of want to always, you know, put your shirt in, kind of look at it. I believe he did look at it, but probably not enough. Part of the issue is he's quite taller than me. I believe he's 6'2", 6'3", something like that.
Guy.
So he's quite high. So his reach is not that much of a problem. So it was pretty much trying to go and bend over and like go lower. And I think this was his mistake. You know, maybe by staying outside, you know, I'm going to grab an extension here. I should have one leg around. And, you know, he could have tried probably with an extension or with a bridge. So I believe the extension first. See, there we go. So by the extension, by pulling the extension out, you're going to raise your body up naturally. So the shirt's really not going to be on your way. And again, for a player at the caliber, should be a very easy shot. And obviously the next element would be the bridge, which I should have something around here too. And obviously, you know, more like snooker, but there we go. And there way, there's absolutely no shirt foul. Would have never been an issue. And to be quite honest, Quint is actually a pretty good snooker player. So you would have think using the bridge would have not been an issue either.
Interesting stuff, Florian. We appreciate you you joining us. Hang loose. We're going to come back to you in a minute. I want to jump back to Mike to kind of finish up this first team match because, Bill, that was such a turning point in the match. I mean, they were off to a 3-0 start. Catchy looks like he's going to run out. Suddenly he fouls. He gives ball in hand to Billy, and everything changes at that point in the match. I mean, not just that game, but everything changes. Mike, where do we go after that? We go next up after Billy pulls out that win. Corey Deuel comes on against Fedor Gorst, and I don't know about you, you know. Again, what is Fedor? 20 years old. I mean, 20. Is he even 21 yet? He's a young kid, right?
I think he's.
Yeah, no, he's a great young player. You know, won the world championship, 9-ball championship last year. So, you know, and he's such a technically sound, fundamentally sound player. You know, but again, these are, you know, race to one. You get one shot at it, and it can change the way you think about a match or about a game. You know, I want to go back to the Billy match because, you know, when Kachi fouled, I think he was winning 3-0 at that point. So not only did that turn course of that game, but Billy went on to win four games after, ran the rest of that rack to win the match.
Right.
So, you know, as far as, you know, Fedor and Corey goes, I thought Fedor was going to actually play better than he did. He made a couple of weird little mistakes during that. But Fedor missed, you know, a key ball in that rack to allow Corey to run out. So, That kind of, kept pushing USA toward that match finish line.
Yeah, so after the catchy foul, we've got Billy winning. It goes 3-1. Duel comes in, beats Federer. Federer did miss a big 2-ball in that match, and Corey takes advantage, so we're at 3-2. Then you've got Sky and Josh Filler again, second time in that team match, and that one gets to be a little messy, misses on both sides, but eventually Skyler comes out ahead in that one, and so now we're 3-3. And, there was a lot talked about in the press conference yesterday about Sky and Filler meeting up again because of how last year's ended, and I don't think either of those players would have been too I don't know that either of them were too impressed with their performance in that first team match. What did you think of their second game in that first match?
Yeah, no, they're not going to use that for too many instructional videos. Josh did not play well. He tends to shoot his way out of problems. His position play sometimes gets a little bit loose, but he doesn't worry about it because he can fire his way out. But he missed a 6-ball in that rack that allowed Skyler to win that. So, that was an opportunity that they missed as well. So, a lot of the U.S. comeback was spurred by these guys missing shots that they don't normally miss.
I felt like that 6-ball kept coming up too. The first game, Fluke's in the 6-ball, then against Sky, Filler misses the 6-ball. Of course, catchy fouls, shooting the 6-ball. It was like the 6-ball had a lot of things tied to it in that first match. I just kept thinking 6-ball, 6-ball, 6-ball. So we're tied 3-3 after the Sky Filler match. And in comes, again, a rematch of Jason Shaw, Shane Van Boening, but this time Shane gets the better of Shaw.
Yeah, well, Jason, again, it's that one game at a time thing, and Jason broke empty.
Dry break,
broke
right.
dry, and Shane ran out. Not a lot you can do about that.
Right. So then we're 4-3 Team USA. On the hill, we get Chris Robinson again against, the tough matchup for the rookie, Albin Ocean. But Chris comes out ahead when he really needed to and puts Team USA up 1-0. What did you think of Chris the second time around in that first match?
Much more comfortable. Got a couple opportunities. Albin missed a shot that he doesn't normally miss. And then later in the rack, Albin got a little funny on position, I believe, and ended up playing safe on the 6-ball, bumping it up table. And Chris ended up banking that home and then running out from there to give the U.S. the match win. I remember thinking at the time, and I didn't really get a chance to ask Alex about it or Jeremy, but I wondered if, Albin was looking to play safe, thinking, all right, this guy's the rookie. I don't expect him to come through with a shot like this, so I'm just going to leave him this long. It was quite an obvious bank shot. It wasn't anything that was really hidden from play. I just didn't think he thought. I think Albin thought Chris couldn't come with the shot, and he did. He made a great bank shot and then ran out. That was a big point for the U.S. and probably a big thing to be able to get Chris to calm himself down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Bearing the winning shot for your team to get a big Mosconi point. Nice start for the rookie Chris Robinson there in that first match. So Team USA comes out ahead after that 5-3. They get that big first point again. Hard to say how that'll loom in terms of the entire 4-day event, but certainly good to get off on the right foot. And they needed it today because in the next 3 matches, things did not go so well. Match number 2, we see Fedor Gorst and Josh Filler, really a solid matchup of two of Europe's best young players against kind of the old veterans from Team USA, Corey Duel and Shane Van Boening. And, walk us through it, Mike, but that was not what I would say was a great match for our veterans there.
Yeah, no, it was, the wait for the Mosconi Cup was painful. Watching that doubles match was painful. It was just not a very good match by any player on any side. There were 4 players who were doing more 3-cushion play than they were 9-ball. And it was just, it was a slugfest. There was one rack where I think probably went 5 or 6 innings on the 3-ball. And it wasn't because all the safes were that great. It was just missed opportunities and some little bit shoddy play. But those things happen. Again, I think the players, it was the first real match. and the players were really kind of getting used to the situation, getting used to the arena. There was no emotion in the match. There was no drive. There was, it just, and the play was indicative of that. It just kind of, it was really a slog fest.
Yeah, especially as we got deeper into that. Like the fifth game of that match had, I don't know how many innings. I mean, it was a mess. I mean, it looked like an APA amateur league match. It was. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the guys because I know how hard it is, but it was just really shocking to see. And I think even at the time, the commentators on DAZN were like, "Wow, this is not what we're used to seeing," because it just went on and on and on. And ultimately in that match, Team USA did have an opportunity to kind of climb back in. And I want to bring Florian back in here because we saw a shot. Shane Van Boning, he pockets the ball, but missed his position for his partner in a game that really ended up kind of taking them out of that match. Can we bring Florian back in real quick, Steve? Florian, are you there, buddy?
I am there, guys. Yeah.
So Florian, we want to take a look at the second match. Shane had an opportunity. I think they were down to like the 8 and the 9 ball, if I'm not mistaken, and it looked like Team USA was going to finish that out and pull within a game, but really, I would say an uncharacteristic mistake from SVB. Can you kind of show us what happened there?
Yeah, actually, I think this was sort of the shot. So again, coming from memory, but I believe it was an 8 to 9 ball shot. And the 8 was almost lined up with the 9, if not just slightly off. And I believe Shane had a pretty steep angle, kind of hard to replace exactly. And what happened here is I believe really it's due to the new felt. So on a normal table, if you hit just a little bit of bottom, you're going to be okay to come back right here. But on a new table, because it slides so much, the tension kind of naturally brings you straight to the 9 ball. And what happened, let me see if I can recreate here. Something like this, right? So we didn't put enough bottom, and it ended up touching the 9 ball, and I think the 9 ball ended up something like this. It was a straight up touch. So, really in that case, it was the brand new fail that kind of messed him up a little bit. If he had played a little more low and bring his cue ball more here to either go, 2 rails there, something like this, or just kind of stay there. And I'm pretty sure that's what he tried, just bring his cue ball there. But because of the slick plus, it just kind of messed him up. And unfortunately, that was a turning point, actually. So big shots here and a kind of a big mistake for Shane, which is very unusual, I'll say.
Yeah, because shortly after that leave by Shane, Florian, we saw Federer come up and really bury a nice bank shot. I don't know if you happen to see that shot, but,
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm correct, this was something like this here. So we're looking at, I believe, the 9 ball somewhere there. And I think a cue ball towards this. So obviously, it's kind of hard to say how far it was off the rail. But I don't think it was that far. The closer it is to the rail, the harder it is. But, and you have no choice. There's no real cut shot. I mean, if you try to cut it, most likely you'll miss and you'll rattle the ball. So you're kind of dead. So you had to go for the bank.
Do or die.
Doesn't mean I'm going to take it, but, there you go. Oh, look at me. Made it, actually. So, but it's a tough shot, but you got to go for it. There's nothing else left. He's got no pressure, really, because whatever he can do, it can only go well or bad no matter what. So this was the right shot, by the right moment, and very costly mistake for Team USA. And it's always a good shot to have as far as, Team Europe. It's just a confidence boost, right?
Yeah, so Team USA now tied with Team Europe 1-1. Thank you, Florian. We'll come back to you in a few minutes. Gorst and Filler get that win in that second match over Duel, Shane Van Boning. We're tied 1-1. And then we go to match 3, which is the rookie, right? Chris Robinson and Catchy. Yeah, because that was a match that kind of ended up. Well, we'll get into it. Do we still have Mike with us, Steve? I also noticed they were saying something different than Clenty. They were pronouncing it differently. Eklund.
His name.
Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe we've been saying it wrong this whole. Mike, have we been saying it wrong this whole time?
No, Eklund is his formal name. Clenty is kind of a nickname.
Okay.
It's like Mike as opposed to Michael, whatever.
All right, so both work. So we haven't been offending him openly here on social media, which is good because Jason Shaw gets real mad if you do that stuff. So we didn't offend anybody. We're staying on the good side of both teams. But that third match, Chris Robinson gets the early call, first singles match. Did that surprise you, throwing the rookie out there that quickly in the first singles?
Not really. I think the captains know that early on they're not going to go with their heaviest hitters in the first singles match. They usually save that for the last match of the first day. So it was an opportunity for him to get Chris out there without being in a situation where you needed to win a match. You know, it was one. You know, it was what was it? It was 1-1 at that point. So you're not going to get hurt too bad no matter what happens. So it was a smart move on Jeremy's part, and likewise, you know, Clenty is probably, you know, if you had to list Team Europe 1 through 5, he'd probably be the number 5 player. So, so it made sense to me. And, you know, they both missed a couple of shots early on in that match. You know, but Chris had a couple of really nice runouts and, you know, ended up taking a 4-2 lead.
Yeah, he's up 4-2 after the 6th game. And then things kind of fell apart. You know, Catchy.
Well, what happened after that was, you know, it was kind of unfortunate for Chris. I mean, he was in a good situation. He played a really good safe at 4-2, and Clenty jumped to get to the 2-ball.
That's right, 2-ball jump. Yep, and then the
missed
3-ball jump.
Badly, and it double banked back across the side.
Yeah.
So he really kind of lucked into 2-ball. Then he made a spectacular jump on the 3-ball because he had no position on the 3 as well. Made that nice and cleanly. But really, Chris got unlucky in that match with that game, and then the following game, you know, Clenty broke and was dry, and left the 2-9 near the corner pocket into one-way up table on an empty break, and Chris tried to bank the 1 down into the combination to close out the match and missed, and then Kachi ended up making the 1, and then made a really nice rail first shot length of the table to get that 2-9 carom to tie the match at 4-4.
Yeah,
So that was a really nice shot. But again, Chris got a little unlucky in those 2 games, you know, with an opportunity to close out the match.
You mentioned that 2-9 combo by Catchy in the 8th game, which made it 4-4. Again, I think we got Florian here. That was an excellent shot, and I want to see if he can show it to us. Florian, did you see the shot where Catchy was able to tie it up with Chris in that 8th game? I think he came off the rail and made that 2-9 combo.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a great shot. Quite frankly, I spotted it. I don't know if it's my trick shot nature or what, but I did see it when he was shooting it, and I tried my best to reset it again. I know there was a few more balls on that side, but they're kind of irrelevant here anyway. The 9 is hanging in front of the pocket. You know, hard safe, it's really deep in there, but I think it's just standing somewhere there. The 2-ball, I believe, was no more than a ball away from the rail, maybe a ball and a half. So what I have there, and yeah, and it's kind of blocked there. I mean, the jump shot would be too rough, too long distance. You have to land perfect, and it would most likely end up doing something not that you want. So yeah, the right call was here. You know, play that to the top left, go here, nudge the side of the right side of the 2-ball, and make the 9-ball. So let me see if I can make it again. There you go. Yeah, it's
Nice.
pretty automatic shot. There was really nothing much to it, but you just had to make the right decision. And I think this was a big game too, because I believe he made it 4-4, and from there it was all the way up. So
Yeah, so it goes 4-4. Then we go to the Hill game of that match, and Robinson has the break. He breaks, he gets the 4-ball on the break, and the table is wide open. It looks like he's going to run out. Looks like he's got to for sure run out. Mike, at that point, were you thinking Chris Robinson's going to get his first big win in the Mosconi Cup?
Yeah, you know, I really did. I was watching that last rack, and he had a couple of good shots to start that rack. The 1 and the 2, made some really nice shots on those, and he was in just, you know, an easy position. He just needed to, you know, play from the 7 to the 8. He was going a couple of rails, and he was coming across his line, you know, of aim, but he still had probably a good foot on each side of that line where he would have been safe. And you know, I asked Jeremy about it afterwards, and he didn't really discuss it in terms of what Chris told him. I don't know if it was just excitement, thinking ahead, grip too tightly, whatever it was, but he overran position pretty badly. And he had already used his extension early in that rack. So he had to fire at the 8. He ended up banking it across corner.
Yeah, he made the 8
successfully.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to try to cut it into the corner and come around for a 9, but he's a better player than I am. So he banked it, but the cue ball drifted way up table, close to the corner pocket, and left him with a really tough shot at the 9. He made a pretty good attempt at a long table length bank shot. It came pretty close. It didn't exactly rattle into jaws, but it was online. And pretty much sold out on that shot. So I really felt bad for him because, I wanted him to win, a match, steal that point that a lot of people didn't think that he could do, win a singles match, get a point that they weren't expecting. Any point like that someone can give to the team, it takes that much pressure off the leaders of the team, like a Sky and a Shane and people like that. They don't have to win every match. So you look for those opportunities where you can steal a match. I thought that was the perfect opportunity for Chris to steal that match. And unfortunately, he just, he had one really bad shot in that match, and it cost him.
Yeah, Florian, maybe you can, if you're still there, maybe you can show us what went wrong for Chris on that. He looked well on his way to a run out, and, again, like Mike said, he got a little, he started to leave himself a little poorly towards the end of the rack, and by the time he was down to that 9 ball, he was in trouble. He needed a hell of a shot, and the time was against him. That was one of the things I noticed with Chris, especially early in the match. Like he would be down on a shot, and you would hear the shot clock come in several times.
They made note of it a couple of times about the amount of time that he was taking, and so different environment.
Well, he's getting used to the shot clock. So, Florian, maybe you could show us what happened on that shot, which ended up really resulting in Catchy getting a huge point there.
Okay, so I did again. The best I believe was close to that. Obviously, for any good player, making the 7 here is not a big deal. And then the natural shape is to go, short rail, long rail, go somewhere in the middle, and from there, if you're around right in the middle of the table, you got an easy shot on the 8, right? Because then it's stop shot from 8 to 9. So this really what his goal was. Again, you got to think tables fast, table slides a little more. So he had to punch it a little bit, and so his cue ball traveled the same way, but rolled way over. And I think this was a little bit of an overlook from Chris's side. Sometimes our brain tends to assume that the ball is somewhere else, right? And in this case, when I saw it, I was thinking the same shot it was going to do. I figured the 8 ball is closer to that. But if the 8 ball was here, it's a much easier shot. Unfortunately, the 8 ball was, about a diamond up. And that changes everything in game. So you really had to hit that softer. But the problem is hitting it soft, it would have been a little here. That's not the right shape. It was really trying to be, perfect. So I'm going to see if I can show you where it should have been here. Okay, see, even I'm not that great here. Actually, I made a big mistake there, obviously, but see, that would have been the shot here. And I think his cue ball went probably about here. And then from there is, it didn't have much of a shot. He had to, I believe he had to bank it, right?
He did. He had to bank the 8, which he did.
He made it, right?
Yeah, he did bank the 8, here, but then,
Yeah. And then lost his cue ball, obviously, because he had to go up and then left himself a tough shot on the 9. So, again, it was just kind of an oversight, I would say. Obviously, for somebody at caliber, it's not a big deal to play center table, but because the ball rolled, and apparently, he got me too. I overplayed as well. So sometimes your brain kind of tells you one thing, but actually you shouldn't do it. And I think this is just one of those cases. And unfortunately for him, that 8 ball was way higher than there. So played a big game. I mean, that was out. I didn't think the opponent is going to go back to the table at this game. So.
Yeah, well, hopefully Chris gets another opportunity here later in the Cup to turn things around. I know that was a tough break for him, but Florian,
it's a simple little mistake. It's really not a big deal. I think it's just a matter of the short race and everything. But in a longer match, I mean, this stuff like that happened, and it's just a little oversight. But I don't think he puts his ability in question. He's just got to forget about it, go to the next day, and never think about it anymore.
Yeah. Hey, Florian, I think we're going to let you run for the night. I know you got stuff going on, but I wanted to mention, it looks like you got a new sponsor there on your table. You got the 8-ball mini clip game. You got a new sponsor there?
That's right. Yeah, that's the first time you actually see the logo in public. It's not even announced yet.
Oh.
Yeah, I did sign with video game company. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And I think when I keep going on that mini series I had, that was virtual versus real, where actually I'm trying to recreate in real life the shot that people send me in virtual. So it gets pretty entertaining, I'll say that.
Nice. Well, congratulations on that. And for all of our viewers, once you stop watching Talking Mosconi tonight, make sure you go play some 8-ball mini clip and tell them Florian sent you. Tell them Venom sent you. All right.
Yeah,
Florian, we'll talk to you again tomorrow, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
I'm good feeling good.
All right, Mike. So we get through the first 3 matches today, and suddenly Team USA is now down 2-1. But we got the Mullet Brothers. We got Sky Woodward. We got Billy Thorpe and those beautiful long mullets they've been growing all year long for the Team USA fans. I know the Team Europe fans didn't particularly like them, but we love them here in the U.S. And so, you know, I wanted to call them. You remember the Rock and Roll Express, the old wrestling tag team?
I do.
I was calling them today. I was calling them the Rack and Roll Express. I wanted to see them doing some high fives and some flying jump kicks. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off track. So, Mike, that fourth match, I had high expectations. Sky and Billy obviously have a great chemistry together, but they didn't look so great in that fourth match against Jason Shaw and Albin Ocean. And again, that's a hell of a pairing right there, Shaw and Albin. So I don't want to, take anything away from Billy and Sky, but not their best match together, I don't think.
No, they didn't play a great match. And I, personally, I think Albin and Jason's the best combination that Europe has, because Albin is the perfect partner for Jason, because Albin is totally under control. He never gets flustered by what kind of leave he has. He doesn't show any emotion, whether he thinks a shot was tough, easy, bad position, good position. He plays every shot the same. And it allowed Jason to just zone in and play his game. I thought Jason played great in that match. I think that anybody would have had a hard time beating them in that contest. So Shane and Billy did not play that well, but I don't think either one of them will get flustered by that at all. So it's just one of those matches you just chalk up to, it's a race to 5 and it's doubles. You do the best you can. So just live to fight another day.
Yeah, there was an interesting moment in that match where, of course, Team USA, Billy and Sky actually started out leading in that match briefly. But I had in my notes, Sky late in the match fails to call push out on the shot, and he gets called for a foul. What did you think of that? That was kind of like the clothing foul earlier. I had never really seen that in the Mosconi Cup, and I don't know if that's a result of, they just haven't been playing, or if that's a rules thing that they didn't really think about. Like, what was your take on that failing for Sky to fail to call the push out?
Well, it's just, it's a rule. You play by the rules. It's, there are a lot of things in sports like golf that are really obvious things. And still, if you don't do it properly by the rules, you get called for it. In this instance, Sky, it was an obvious push out. He was talking about the yellow ball. He was talking about this. It was very clear what the intent was, but he didn't call the push out. So, you guys know this rule with calling your 8-ball.
Right.
I don't care how I was sitting in the corner of the pocket. If you don't call it, you're going to lose. So, and he didn't argue about it. As soon as John Lehman called the foul on him, he understood it. He shook his head right away, just walked back to his chair. He realized that he had made a mistake. Just one of those things, just lapse, of focus for that couple of seconds. And, just it cost them that game, which was the match winning game for Team Europe. So they won 5-2.
Yeah.
But, it's just one of those things. I know that in the press conference afterwards, Clint Icacci was talking about his foul, saying that it wasn't a shirt foul, but then he went on to say he thought it was ridiculous that Skyler got called for a no push foul when it was obvious. Well, you have rules for a reason.
Right.
You follow them. If you don't follow them, you get punished. And especially in a big event like this, play by the rules.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting because it kind of waited it out. But the interesting thing there is you mentioned referee John Lehman. How often do we ever talk about the referees? And man, he had a busy day. He had 2 fouls on day one, and he probably goes years without calling any fouls like that. So that was kind of interesting. And like you said, Billy and Sky at that point were down 4-2. So I don't know that necessarily cost them the match. It was just kind of the last straw that put Team Europe over the top in that big matchup and gave them a 3-1 lead on the day. Before we jump into the fourth match, I know do we have any commenters, any questions or anything that have come in? We've kind of ignored the chat. In the chat, I'll apologize for that. That's all on me, but I didn't know if anybody had piped in. We've got put in Tom Cruise, hit him with the impending doom. Okay. That's from Evan Moore. He wants Tom Cruise instead of Corey Deuel, apparently. I don't know if Tom Cruise could have got through the COVID test. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hollywood celebrity.
Yeah.
No more after that.
No more after that. All right. Steve's giving me one of these, which means stop doing that. So I'm gonna stop doing that and go back to Mike, which is where everybody wants to hear. So Mike, we get into. So we're down 3-1, right? Team USA down 3-1, and it's been a while since Team USA has ended a day one down more than a game, right? Last year they won the first 2 games, then lost the next 3, so they ended up down 3-2 the first day. 2018 they actually were down 2-0, win the next 3 games, so they were up 3-2. But you've got to go all the way back to like 2017 to see a day where Team USA has a lopsided kind of day. And as we moved into the 5th match of Albin versus Shane Van Boening, Albin had looked pretty good. And as that match got underway, it kind of looked all Albin there for a while, but Shane kind of turned it around. Walk us through that 5th match, if you would, between Albin and Shane, because it ended up being, I don't know if as significant for Team Europe given the score, but certainly significant for Team USA because they do not want to go down 4-1 to this Team Europe. I mean, not with the makeup of this team. Mike, what did you think of that 5th match?
Yeah, it was the critical match. And I think that as much as you saw lack of emotion and not a lot of spirit through those first couple of matches where people were kind of getting a feel for this new Mosconi, I think the 5th match showed us what we can expect in the matches coming forward. There was a little more emotion. You could tell there was a little more pressure on both players. Seemed like there was more. There was finally a match where there was really something at stake. And what was at stake was being down 4-1 or going to sleep only down 3-2, which is what they were down last year. So huge difference and a lot of pressure on Shane for sure. But just as much pressure on Albin. He knew how important that was for his team. So you had 2 really great players in a situation where they were in a really important match. I think it was 1-1, and Shane missed a shot that he would normally make. And then it got down to the final 9, and Albin got a little bit funny on the final 9 and hung that in the jaws of the pocket,
right?
Which allowed Shane to take a 2-1 lead. I thought that was a big point in the match. It still ended up going 3-3, then 4-3, then 4-4, but I thought that was a big momentum shift. I thought that gave Shane a little bit of hope that Albin wasn't going to be invincible in this match. As the match progressed, they both got, noticeably better.
Right.
Those last three or four racks, they both, if they had a shot, they were out. They both played really well the last couple racks. And, Albin, as happened, 2 years ago against Schuyler in that fantastic match that they played, it got to 4-4 and Albin was breaking. And in this case, he broke dry.
Same situation.
And left a shot at the 1 ball and Shane ran out. So, Albin certainly didn't I don't think either one of them did anything wrong the second half of the match. I thought they both played really well. And you could tell when Shane made that final 9, there was a little fist pump. There was a little bit more emotion from the teammates. They knew what was at stake. And so I think now that kind of broke the ice. Now we're going to get back into a normal Mosconi scheme of things. The matches are going to be more important. Teams are going to start feeling a little bit closer to the finish line every match that they play in. So those first couple matches, just a feeling out process. So I think that to have it 3-2 at the end of day one was probably fair. I thought Chris should have won his match, so it was going to be 3-2 one way or the other. I'm okay with that. I think that it sets up then for a really good day 2. And I think that, neither team is going to steamroll the other from here. That would have been the fear if Europe was up 4-1 on day 1 was, are they going to run away with this on day 2 and take all the heart out of USA? Now I think we're in a dogfight, and I think you'll see more emotion. I think you'll get to see the play get better, each day. I think both coaches, both captains in the press conference after today's matches mentioned how they thought the level of play would definitely get better each day as we went on, as the rust comes off and as the intensity ratchets up. So yeah, I think we're in for a good dogfight from here on in.
Yeah, and I think fans of Team USA, when you go to bed tonight, you better say your blessings for having a SVB pull that one out late, because that was, I mean, I was talking to Bill and I said, man, this is starting to go off the rails a little bit, because Albin took that lead 4-3, and I thought, oh no, this is not what we want. But Shane was very Shane at the end of that fifth match, and had a break and run, and then, like you said, took advantage of the dry break by Albin and ran that rack out too. So we'll end the day down by a point, but things certainly could have been worse. I do want to look at, we have some stats that, courtesy, I think, our friends at AccuStats. Mike, while you're still with us, just want to kind of look at some of these stats and get your thoughts. Of course, we've talked about the match wins for Team Europe. They took 3 matches today. Overall, 22 games won, 171 balls made, 14 misses. I mean, I don't know if Team Europe misses 14 shots like in a year normally. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, it looked. I think the day looked worse on video than it did by the stats. For the day, Europe shot their total performance average, which is AccuStats basically batting average for how a team played during the course of the day, misses, opportunities, break and runs, things like that, was 865. Perfect score is 1,000. So 865 is decent. It's not a really poor day at the office. It was above average. 14 misses. At the beginning of the day, there were a lot of dry breaks, which made for some really funny racks. But it started to even out toward the later part of the day. I think it ended up being just under 33% dry breaks, which is actually pretty normal. Through the first couple of matches, I think it was about 50% dry breaks. So, again, this is something that just, the game will start to come to the players a little bit more. Table will start to become a little more predictable. The cloth will be a little less slick as they play on it more. So, the standard of play will go up. I think that, today was relatively even for the two sides. So 3-2, Europe played a little bit better on the stat sheet, games won and balls made, things like that. So 3-2 seems about right.
Yeah, I want to see can we look at Team USA stats here. So you mentioned, Mike, the TPA, which is, we'll call it the batting average, right? So people can kind of relate. But so Team Europe was at 865. You see Team USA is at 832, one less miss. They also had a scratch on the break. They also had a foul. They played a number of bad safeties and bad position shots. So again, I don't know if you want to elaborate anything here on Team USA stats. You can see, though, they had just a little bit worse day than Team Europe.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of that is, to me, I look at the things like the bad safeties and the bad position. Bad safeties, it's usually when you get beat to the shot by the other guy. So, those are key stats to me, bad position and bad safeties. Getting out of line, leaving a ball open for the opponent. Those are the things that'll turn a game around, turn a match around when you're playing guys at this level. So that's, Team USA played at an 832 TPA for the day. That's not good. You get under 800, it's really bad. But, 832, not a great day at the office from a performance standpoint. But to only be down 3-2, I think, Team USA went to bed, probably happier this year than last year. Last year they were down 3-2, but they won the first 2 matches and lost the next 3.
Right.
At least they rebounded this year, won the last match of the day. They get to go home on a little bit of the momentum kick, and we'll see how that carries through to tomorrow.
Yeah, it's interesting how, depending on when the victories come, how it changes your perspective at the end of the day, because I remember last year walking out of the arena on day 1 thinking, damn it, this turned out awful after they had won the first 2 and then lost 3. And today I'm very happy and thinking, it's 3-2 and we're going into tomorrow. So Mike, just a few final thoughts before we let you go. Tomorrow, it sounds like we'll see singles, doubles, singles, doubles. So 3 singles, I'm sorry, singles, doubles, singles, doubles,
singles. Three singles, two doubles.
You got it. Yeah. So
and the first match is the fans' choice,
right,
which we'll know early tomorrow afternoon what that is. I expect it to either be Shane and Jason or Skylar and Joshua. That would be my guess is how the fans would go, but who knows? So you'll have that to start the day, then a doubles match, then a singles, then a doubles, and finish the day with another singles. So, it'll be interesting to see who comes out there tomorrow in the two singles matches that are kind of predetermined. It can't be Shane and it can't be Chris because they played singles today. So be interesting to see who they trot out there tomorrow. I'd be surprised. In the last couple of years, they seem to have saved Sky for the third day and made their big move on the third day. So I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see Sky play singles tomorrow. That would kind of be in keeping with what the captains have done the last couple of years. But, it's a guessing game for them. It's a chess match to get these pairings, these matchups that you want, that you think are in your favor. Put the players out there that you think are feeling strongest. Johan used to do a lot of, if you played doubles in the second match, take one of those players and play them singles in the third match so that they're playing two matches in a row. We'll see if that happens tomorrow. Just little chess match things like that. It's always kind of a fascinating thing to dissect after the fact.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what the lineups turn out to be. It'll be interesting to see who the fans select. I think, again, like you said, for Team USA, probably SVB, Shane Van Boning, or Skylar Woodward. For Team Europe, a likely pick is either Shaw or Josh Filler. So we'll see when Matchroom makes that announcement sometime tomorrow. But it'll give us something to look forward to. Matches will be coming in tomorrow, 12:30 Central for us. And Mike, you're in Chicago. You're on Central Time. For those of you on the East Coast, an hour later. So you'll be looking at 1:30. And those of you on the West Coast, you're closer to like 10:30 in the morning. So Florian, you better set your alarm if you're still tuning in, listening. Mike, we appreciate you joining us. Before you go, I want to mention Mike, of course, is the publisher of Billiards Digest, the premier billiard magazine in the entire billiard industry. If you like what he has to say here on our live stream, you're going to love what he writes about the Mosconi Cup. So now would be a good time to go to billiardsdigest.com and subscribe. It's great. Shows up in your mailbox once a month, which is so nice. I love to still get my hands on a nice magazine with a nice cover. So support the folks that you enjoy listening to and subscribe to Billiards Digest. I know Mike would greatly appreciate it. He's not going to say it, so I'm going to say it. But Mike, we will plan. Yeah, we'll plan to see you again tomorrow. Hopefully, maybe a little earlier. Today went a little long, didn't it?
It was. The match has really dragged along today. So hopefully tomorrow the pace will pick up a little bit and be a little brisker. The shot making will be a little truer. It'll pick up as you get into more singles matches for sure. So they tend to race through those a little bit faster. So yeah, tomorrow hopefully we'll be on a little bit earlier.
All right, Mike, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll plan to see you tomorrow. For the rest of you folks, again, if you weren't able to watch the Mosconi Cup today, it's available only on the streaming platform DAZN.com. That's DAZN.com. It's about it's $19.99 for the month. You can subscribe, and then you can unsubscribe at the end of the month. So I know it's not free, but to be honest, when you turn on your TV and you're watching cable, that's not free either, right? Just because you have ESPN, you do pay for it.
Well, let's remember that these things cost money to put on.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about an industry that had a lot of downs this year and could use the money going forward.
Absolutely. So if you haven't tuned into the Mosconi Cup, go to DAZN or DAZN, D-A-Z-N. I always want to say DAZN because it just seems like it, but DAZN.com. If you've got the smart TVs, a lot of them have the app on there, and you can tune in. And we will be back tomorrow night, roughly the same time, generally about an hour after the matches conclude. We'll be here at the studio, and we will be
hopefully a little earlier.
And we will be, of course, talking Mosconi tomorrow night. So tune in tomorrow night, guys. We appreciate you joining us, and we will see you again in just a little while.